Welcome to Love Data Week. I hope you're all having an excellent week and getting to see some really cool presentations. Today, I'm doing my Showing Your Data Some Love, Inclusive and Accessible Presentation Tips. We're going to talk about a variety of different ways of making our data a little bit more accessible during presentations. I am fully outright saying, because I do see some familiar names. If you've previously come for my sessions on like Microsoft PowerPoint, we're not repeating that. There's some things that might be like, that sounds a little familiar, but we really tried to make it data focused. There will be some examples of both accessible and inaccessible data, and we'll talk through where those are and all the exemplars. So let's begin with our visuals. So as we're thinking about the visual construction of a presentation, it's important to remove any unnecessary grid lines, tick marks, or decorative effects, particularly when we're showing charts and graphs of data. Um, really keep it as simple and clean as possible when you're selecting how you want to kind of present your information. The one thing that you do want to make sure is included is any data lines or bars directly. So like label your data as much as possible. Um, by using only a legend when it's absolutely necessary or when it's kind of in supplement to. I always like to tell people try what's called the squint test. Squint at your slide. If you can't tell what the most important part is, your visual hierarchy is a little bit off. So take that minute to really think through, where do I want my audience's eye to go naturally throughout my information? Um, on the right-hand side of my slide, I have a sample of an accessible piece of data. There are grid lines, but they're super light, simple, kind of into the background. The real emphasis is on each of the bars in the chart. Um, and we have data indicators so that you're not just having to like guesstimate where the top of the bar is lying when it's in between the grid lines. So all of my data is clearly labeled to indicate what the quantity is or the percentage of the scores throughout the quarters that are being displayed in my revenue chart. Um, so we want to keep it simple, but we do want to keep it informative. When we talk about alt text, so graphs and charts do need alt text, just like you would do alt text for an image to describe the purpose of the image. You want to provide at least a simple sentence or two of alt text for charts or graphs in presentations. In particular, think about what is the content's purpose, function. Um, we want the alt text to help us because it's not just that we're having alt text for a screen reader for someone who may have a visual impairment, but we're also using alt text so that way, my best example is if I am a broke college student and I'm using a very old device that maybe hasn't been updated in a while, or I have very poor internet bandwidth in the location that I'm in at this moment, if it can't load fully, instead of the image loading, because it can't, it'll actually display the alt text instead. So even if I'm in a place where I have just technology that can't fully load, I'm still getting that information and being notified, hey, there was a chart here. This is the purpose of that chart. My example of kind of sample alt text to show that matter of function and purpose would be like a line graph showing a steady 15% increase in annual sales from 2020 to 2025, peaking at 2 million in the final year. So I'm not telling them every single data point, but I'm giving just enough information so that they understand, again, what is the major idea that was being represented in that image. The big thing for alt text, keep it brief. 125 to 150 characters is the max for alt text. Um, It's also good to use complete sentences or phrases and appropriate punctuation to enhance clarity, because it's going to tell assistive technology how to best read that information. But also, like I said, if I have a situation where my image can't load, that alt text is going to display. So we want it to be as clear as possible about what we're indicating. Try the Arizona State Image Generator. Arizona State University put out a free tool where you can upload your images, and it will provide sample alt text, a longer description, and even a transcription of as much data as it can pull from your chart. And you can use that to kind of remix and make available as needed. And even if you're like, I don't even know where to get started with writing alt text, Arizona's Image Generator is actually pretty decent. This is one of the few AI tools that I really kind of endorse going, hey, this is actually not bad um, in terms of presenting that information. Note when longer descriptions are available and where they are located. So for instance, if I have a slide that has a lot of intense data and maybe I have a separate table with the data points to go pull that information from. In like alt text, it would be good to note, hey, a longer description is available in the comment section or in the notes section of my PowerPoint. So that way users know, oh, I need to go look here and I'm going to find this information. So it helps with navigation.
Hi, Lindsay. There's a question in the chat about
Mhm.
alt text. It says, Richard posted, do you have any recommendations for alt text if the charts are dynamically generated? For example, like on an interactive dashboard.
Mm, that's an excellent question. I would definitely be providing at least the context of what is the chart for and indicating that it is dynamically generated. Um, because then you're really going to have to go starting to look for um, that specific data point of like what you're filtering down for, but at least indicate like the purpose of the chart and what kind of data is being presented. Um, it's more you're giving direction so that people can go look for more information and where they're going to go find it. All right. Now I just talked about longer descriptions, but I'm going to actually talk about how to write one. So when alt text does not provide enough detail, provide longer descriptions for images when it's needed to convey detailed information. So charts and graphs, it's best to think of a long description like a news article. So the first sentence should always kind of be the headline. What is the overall main idea of the chart? In the case of the chart that I have sampled, I have an enrollment dashboard. So my headline is, we're looking at headcount enrollment trends from fall of 2014 to fall of 2024. You're providing a summary of the data. So what are any major trends that we want to look at? What information, at least in terms of my chart, would be like the term type? Is it showing undergraduate or graduate students or all? Like, what is the scope of the data being conveyed? Um, and then it is always best practice to include raw data points so that way users can go and make their own interpretations or find their own details as needed. So if I'm especially like having a chart where, again, I need more data points of what's being presented, and I am pulling it from a chart external of PowerPoint or external of the presentation um, generator, uh, then having that additional information can be very valuable for users to break down. Because the good news is that if you're building like a table or a chart or a pie graph in a Microsoft tool or in a Google, it always is developed using little mini Excel spreadsheets that are embedded underneath. And users with assistive tools can actually use that data and access it to get the more finer data points that maybe are getting summarized in the chart or graph. Please check your color contrast. High contrast between text and backgrounds is meant to make it easier to read content, especially for people with visual impairments or in low light conditions. Um, I don't know if you've ever been in a room where the sun is shining down onto the screen as things are being projected. And if all of my colors are super light or super dark and there's no balance of light and dark, I'm not seeing that content that's being presented. Even if I have 20/20 vision, no glasses, no nothing. Um, so we want to make sure that we have a nice mix of light and dark colors going back and forth. Color can't be the only way to distinguish data. So please consider any type of way of presenting data where you're maybe using dashed lines versus solids or different markers. So like having circles, squares, something patterned, even if it's different patterns and alternating between the different data points. So that way we're being able to recognize the different elements. On the right-hand side, I have an example of poor color contrast because one, all of my colors are super dark. So if I have certain visual impairments where I can't tell between different shades, I may not be able to tell between the different colors to indicate what is the first quarter, what is the second quarter, what's the third, what's the fourth. Um, because they're all so dark and overlapping. So by adding, like again, circles, squares, hash marks, some type of dash within the chart, I'm better able to determine what is what, or better yet, I could add some direct labels so that inside each of those part sections of my pie chart, I have like indicating inside, this is quarter one, this is quarter two, this is quarter three, this is quarter four, avoiding the legend altogether and having the actual numbers rather than just slices of the pie where I have to guess, is that 1% or 2%? Um, so we want to have different indicators when delivering a presentation. So rule number one, if it's written on the slide, read it aloud with any additional information that you want to provide. So it's important not to assume that your audience is going to be reading or following the slide at the pace that you're speaking at, or that they're going to only be listening to your narration and reading the slides separately. It is better to kind of have that combination of the written and the oral text being read. So if it's written on the slide, please read it aloud. Verbally describe charts, images, and key points. My example is like this bar chart shows a 20% increase in sales from quarter one to quarter two. So I'm not only just saying, as you can see on the chart, because I don't know which part of the chart you're looking at any given time. So provide kind of your color commentary so that people can kind of help go on. And as I have on my slide, avoid saying, as you can see here without explanation. Um, again, it's better to not assume that your audience is interpreting the information the same way that you are, because they could be seeing, interpreting something completely different than you are at any given time. Everyone has different levels of focus and has different perspectives and insights. So it's always good to not assume what we can or cannot see. Signal when moving to a new topic or slide. So for example, now let's look at the next slide, which covers our budget forecast. This is mentally preparing the audience of like, okay, we're moving to the next section. What am I shifting my gears for mentally? This helps reduce cognitive load issues for your audience as they are going through the presentation. So as we can now see on my next slide, I am moving to a few more tips for delivering the presentation. And yes, I did create a little Bitmoji of myself delivering a presentation because I'm that nerd. Uh, we want to look at raw numbers are really hard to visualize. So it's always a good idea to think about any analogies to give them scale and emotional weight. So for example, if I am talking about um, ocean conservation, we saved 400,000 gallons of water, enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's giving size and scope where we can like mentally imagine and what that pool will look like and just how much water we're saving through our process. Pause between key points to allow processing time. So if you have a moment where you're like, this is a really important moment. Don't be afraid to let silence reign. This does not mean that we have to be silent the whole time, but we want to respect that. Just like how we want slides to sometimes breathe and have white space, we sometimes want to have that white space in the air, kind of let's absorb. It's also a good idea when necessary and when you feel like you have something also important to repeat or paraphrase audience questions to help the audience process. And this is also important if you're delivering a presentation. If you feel there's something that's really important, take a moment to repeat that piece of data, that point of comparison, if you want it to kind of stay fresh in someone's brain as they're listening, because our brains can only process so much information at one time, and we're more likely to remember something if it's repeated. I like paraphrasing because it kind of allows us to take the whole of the overall presentation, but give it a fresher context and meaning. It's also good to always ask if anyone needs clarification or repetition at any time. Take a moment to stop and take a breath. At this point, I go. If we have questions or concerns before I move on to the last slide, anything that I've said that's like, oh my God, Lindsay, what's going on? What? I know this is a lot of information for 18 minutes. All right. So, my last slide is about resources. SALT has many resources on accessibility at the university. Our accessibility resource page is through the SALT site. And of course, I should go and grab a link to that so that way I can share it in the chat, which is also a very good best practice. Um, so let me grab that and I will pop it in the chat. We have self-paced guides, including printable versions. So if you are a handout person or you like the click and follow as individual information is going at more of a bite-sized pace, we have both options available for you. We have topics including but not limited to accessibility basics, Brightspace, Microsoft, Google Workspace. You can always book a consultation. Consultations, I always encourage people, like, don't spend 20 minutes hitting your head going, it's broken. How do I fix it? Take 2 minutes, fill out our form. Let us know what the problem or concern is. And I will make sure that you get booked with the consultation with the appropriate person to answer your question. Um, I can sit for 15 minutes to answer like a one-off question that's like, this is broken, how do we fix it? Or if you want to sit for an hour because you need more in-depth training, tell me. We will, again, pair you with what you need. You can always register for a workshop. We have a variety of workshops throughout each term. Some upcoming topics for our workshops include Brightspace, Grackle Workspace, which is a Google accessibility checker. And we are also doing a workshop on Microsoft PowerPoint accessibility, which is great. Complement to a conversation about the delivery of presentations. We have our PDF remediation pilot. So if you have course materials that need PDF remediation, send them over to our way. We also have tool and support recommendations that are based on varying disciplines. So I'm always going out and looking to see what other universities or organizations have accessibility guidance. And if it's not in our self-paced guides, I try and link out so that you can go find that information as you go along. All right. And you can always email us at salt@stonybrook.edu or visit us at stonybrook.edu/salt. Um, and that is my presentation. So I'm going to ask, do we have any questions, concerns, anything we want to talk about? And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see your faces.
Lindsay, I actually have a quick question.
Hmm.
Um, so for, when you work with staff and faculty members, what are some of the very common questions they would bring to you and ask, Lindsay, please help me with what are like some, you know, common struggles?
Some common struggles in general. I tend to get a lot of questions about how do I get started with writing alt text? So, th like brainstorming, what should alt text be of like what should encompass based on like a certain discipline. I get a lot of questions about video content of like, how do I add captions? How do I provide a transcript to my content? I cannot tell you how many folks have come in and been like, so can we just sit and talk about heading levels? What are heading levels? Let's open a document and like break it down. Because usually once you see it the first time, it's going to be a lot simpler to go, oh, this is what you are talking about when you say the main title and the major sections. And how do you break that down in information? Because I think it was my mind got blown last week. I was teaching my 18-year-old cousin how to make her Word document accessible for her class. Because her school is like really like hardcore about Title II and be like, students, you're going to learn how to do this. So one of her classes is requiring her to do that. Um, and yeah, she thought that the heading levels were like a menu of formatting options. She didn't realize that each heading level, heading one, heading two, heading three, had like a meaning behind it. And that was like mind blown of going, oh, it's not that I'm picking which aesthetic I like best. It's what is the purpose of my heading level? What part of the document am I in? And that's how I use them.
Is there a
Um,
particular like APA or MLA format that, or it doesn't, I guess it's up to the field, I guess.
it's up to
Um,
the field. The good news is that APA has a beautiful APA accessibility website now. So they made like a really like it's free, it's not behind any paywall, open guidelines. Essentially, it's like APA 7.5 of they made a mini update to their format to account for Title II and all the accessibility standards of what we know how to do now. MLA is coming along. They just don't have like a front-facing website, but within their official published guide, they do have accessibility changes. And I see the question from Lisa, are the Stony Brook University PowerPoint presentation templates visually accessible? So our university-wide templates, there are some accessibility things that have to get remediated within it, but I believe Marcom is working on that, and they are aware. So they're going to be providing a more accessible template, but it is visually it is accessible for color contrast. There's just things that built into the template that we could do to make it more accessible. So hopefully we'll get that soon.
do we have other questions for Lindsay?
I swear I don't bite.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So I hope to see you in other sessions. And thank you so much, Lindsay, for a wonderful presentation. And we'll see you guys later.
We will.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a great Love Data week, everyone.
Yes.